This is neoplastic pharmacology, another part of the other drugs listed in your week 14 and 15. Drugs for neoplasia. After this lesson, the student should be able to explain differences between normal cells and cancer cells, identify factors associated with an increased risk of cancer, describe lifestyle factors associated with a reduced risk of acquiring cancer. Another one is identify the three primary therapies for cancer, explain the significance of growth fraction and the cell cycle to the success of chemotherapy. Number 6, describe the nurse's role in the pharmacologic management of cancer. 7, explain how combination therapy and special dosing protocols increase the effectiveness of chemotherapy. Number 8, describe the general adverse effects of chemotherapeutic drugs. Number 9, categorize anti-cancer drugs based on their classification and mechanism of action. And number 10, use the nursing process to care for patients who are receiving anti-neoplastic medications as part of their treatment of cancer. Cancer is one of the most feared diseases in society for a number of valid reasons. It is often silent, producing no symptoms until it reaches an advanced stage. It sometimes requires painful and disfiguring treatments. It may strike at an early age, even during childhood, to deprive the people of a normal lifespan. Perhaps worst of all, the medical treatment of cancer often cannot offer a cure, and progression to death is sometimes slow, painful, and psychologically difficult for patients and their loved ones. Despite its feared status, many successes have been made in the diagnosis, understanding, and treatment of cancer. Modern treatment methods result in a care for nearly 2 of every 3 people, and the 5-year survival rate has steadily increased for many types of cancer. This lesson examines the role of drugs in the treatment of cancer. Medications used to treat this disease are called anti-cancer drugs, neoplastics, or cancer chemotherapeutic agents. Cancer. Characteristics of cancer. Cancer carcinoma is a disease characterized by abnormal, uncontrolled cell division. Cell division is a normal process occurring extensively in most body tissues from conception to late childhood. At some point in time, however, suppressor genes responsible for cell growth stop this rapid division. This may result in a total lack of replication. As in the case of muscle cells and perhaps brain cells, in other cells, genes controlling replication can be turned on when it becomes necessary to replace worn-out cells, as in the case of blood cells and the mucosa of the digestive tract. Cancer is thought to result from damage to the genes controlling cell growth. Once damaged, the cell is no longer responsive to normal chemical signals checking its growth. The cancer cells lose their normal functions, divide rapidly, and invade surrounding cells. The normal cells often travel to distant sites where they populate new tumor, a process called metastasis. In the figure presented, it illustrates some characteristics of cancer cells. Tumor is defined as a swelling, abnormal enlargement or mass. The word neoplasm is often used interchangeably with tumor. Tumors may be solid masses such as lung or breast cancers, or they may be widely disseminated in the blood such as leukemia. Tumors are named according to their tissue of origin, generally with the suffix "oma". Described common types of tumors are often shown in different areas in the body. Now, the causes of cancer. Numerous factors have been found to cause cancer or to be associated with a higher risk for acquiring the disease. These factors are known as carcinogens. Many chemical carcinogens have been modified or identified. For example, chemicals in tobacco smoke are responsible for about one-third of all cancers in the United States. Alcohol ingestion has also been linked to certain cancers, including esophageal, oral, breast, and liver cancers. Some chemicals such as asbestos and benzene have been associated with a higher incidence of cancer in the workplace. In some cases, the site of the cancer may be distant from the entry location, as with bladder cancer caused by the inhalation of certain industrial chemicals. A number of physical factors are also associated with cancer. For example, exposure to large amounts of X-rays is associated with a higher risk of leukemia. Ultraviolet or UV light from the sun is a known cause of cancer or skin cancer. It is estimated that viruses are associated with about 15% of all human cancers. Examples include herpes simplex, types 1 and 2, Epstein-Barr, human papillomavirus, cytomegalovirus, and human T lymphotropic viruses. Factors that suppress the immune system, such as HIV or drugs given after transplant surgery, may encourage the growth of cancer cells. Some cancers have a strong genetic component. The fact that close relatives may acquire the same type of cancer suggests that certain genes may predispose close relatives to the condition. These abnormal genes interact with chemical, physical, and biologic agents to promote cancer formation. Other genes, called tumor suppressor genes, may inhibit the formation of tumors. If these suppressor genes are damaged, cancer may result. Damage to the suppressor gene p53 is associated with cancers of the breast, the lung, the brain, the colon, and the bone. Although the development of cancer has a genetic component, it is also greatly influenced by the factors of the environment. Maintaining or adopting healthy lifestyle habits can reduce the risk of acquiring cancer. Following proper nutrition, avoiding chemical and risk or physical risks, and maintaining a regular schedule of health checkups can help prevent cancer from developing into fatal disease. The following are lifestyle factors regarding cancer prevention or diagnosis that should be used by nurses when teaching patients about cancer prevention. First, eliminate tobacco use and exposure to secondhand smoke. Next, limit or eliminate alcoholic beverage use. Next, maintain a healthy diet, low in fat and high in fresh vegetables and fruits. Next, choose most foods from plant sources. Increase fiber in the diet. Next, exercise regularly and maintain body weight within recommended guidelines. Next will be self-examine your body monthly for abnormal lumps and skin lesions. Next, avoid chronic or prolonged exposure to direct sunlight and or wear protective clothing or sunscreen. Next, have periodic diagnostic testing performed at recommended intervals, such as women should have periodic mammogram according to the schedule recommended by their healthcare provider. Men should receive prostate screening as recommended by their healthcare provider. Women who are sexually active or have reached age 18 should have a PAP test every 3 to 5 years or as directed by the healthcare provider. The following are the classifications of cancer. We start with the benign tumor, slow growing and does not metastasize, does not or could rarely only require drug treatment. They do not transfer from one place to another. Examples of this are your adenoma, papilloma, and lipoma. Osteoma and meningioma are also parts of the common examples. Then we have the term carcinoma, cancer or epithelial tissue, most common type of malignant neoplasm, grows rapidly and it especially metastasizes or transfer from one part of the body to another. Glioma, cancer of the glial or interstitial cells in the brain, the spinal cord, the pineal gland, also your posterior pituitary gland or the retina. We have examples such as telangiectatic glioma and brainstem glioma. Then you have leukemia, cancer of the blood forming cells in bone marrow. It may be acute or chronic. We have myelocytic leukemia and lymphocytic leukemia. Then you also have your lymphoma, cancer of the lymphoid tissues. Examples are your Hodgkin's disease and lymphoblastic lymphoma. Then you have your malignant tumor. These are, they grow fast. They grow rapidly. And they are resistant and resilient to different treatments and causes death once untreated. For example, your malignant melanoma. Then you have sarcoma, cancer of connective tissues, grows extremely rapidly and metastasizes early in the progression of the disease. Osteogenic sarcoma are examples, and also your fibrosarcoma, Kaposi sarcoma, and angiosarcoma. Now, what are the goals of cancer chemotherapy? These are the three: cure, control, and palliation. Pharmacotherapy of cancer is sometimes simply referred to as chemotherapy. Because drugs are transported through the blood, chemotherapy has the potential to reach cancer cells in virtually any location. Certain drugs are able to cross the blood-brain barrier to reach brain tumors. Others are instilled directly into body cavities such as the urinary bladder to bring the highest dose possible to the cancer cells without producing systemic adverse effects. Chemotherapy has three general goals: cure, control, and palliation. When diagnosed with cancer, the primary goal desired by most patients is to achieve a complete cure, that is, permanent removal of all cancer cells from the body. The possibility for cure is much greater if a cancer is identified and treated in its early stages. When the tumor is small and localized to a well-defined region. Indeed, the 5-year survival rates for nearly all types of cancer have increased in the past several decades due to improved detection and more effective therapies. Examples in which chemotherapy has been used successfully as a curative treatment include Hodgkin's lymphoma, certain leukemias, and choriocarcinoma. When cancer has progressed and cure is not possible, a second goal of chemotherapy is to control or manage the disease. Although the cancer is not eliminated, preventing the growth and spread of the tumor may extend the patient's life. Essentially, the cancer is managed as a chronic disease such as hypertension or diabetes. In its advanced stages, cure or control of the cancer may not be achievable. Now, for those patients, chemotherapy is used as palliation. Chemotherapy drugs are administered to reduce the size of the tumor, easing the severity of pain and other tumor symptoms, thus improving the quality of life. Examples of advanced cancers for which palliation is frequently used include osteosarcoma, pancreatic cancer, and Kaposi's sarcoma. Chemotherapy may be used alone or in combination with other treatment modalities such as surgery or radiation therapy. Surgery is especially useful for removing solid tumors that are localized. And surgery lowers the number of cancer cells in the body so that radiation therapy and pharmacotherapy can be more successful. Surgery is not an option for tumors of blood cells or when it would not be expected to extend a patient's lifespan or to improve the quality of life. Approximately 50% of patients with cancer receive radiation therapy as part of their treatment. Radiation therapy is most successful and produces the fewest adverse effects for cancers that are localized. When high doses of ionizing radiation can be aimed directly at the tumor and be confined to a small area. Radiation treatments are frequently prescribed post-operatively to kill cancer cells that may remain following an operation. Radiation is given as palliation for inoperative cancers to shrink the size of a tumor that may be pressing on vital organs and to relieve pain, difficulty in breathing, or difficulty in swallowing. Adjuvant chemotherapy is the administration of anti-neoplastic drugs after surgery or radiation therapy. The purpose of adjuvant chemotherapy is to rid the body of any cancerous cells that could not be removed during surgery or to treat any microscopic metastasis that may be developing. In a few cases, drugs are given as chemoprophylaxis with the goal of preventing cancer from occurring in patients at high risk for developing tumors. For example, some patients who have had a primary breast cancer removed may receive tamoxifen even if there is no evidence of metastasis, because there is a high likelihood that the disease will recur. Chemoprophylaxis of cancer is uncommon because most of the drugs have potentially serious adverse effects. Growth, fraction, and success of chemotherapy. Although cancers grow rapidly, not all cells in a tumor are replicating at any given time. Because anti-neoplastic drugs are generally more effective against cells that are replicating, the percentage of tumor cells dividing at the same time or at the time of chemotherapy is critical. Both normal and cancer cells go through a sequence of events known as cell cycle, as shown here in the figure. Cells spend most of their lifetime in the G0 phase. Although sometimes called the resting stage, the G0 is the phase during which cells conduct their everyday activities such as metabolism, impulse conduction, contraction, or secretion. If the cell receives a signal to divide, it leaves G0 and enters the G1 phase, during which it synthesizes the RNA proteins and other components needed to duplicate its DNA during the S phase. Following duplication of its DNA, the cell enters the pre-mitotic phase or G2. Following mitosis in the M phase, the cell re-enters its resting G0 phase, where it may remain for extended periods depending on the specific tissue and surrounding cellular signals. The actions of many of the anti-neoplastic drugs are specific to certain phases of the cell cycle, whereas others are mostly independent of the cell cycle. For example, mitotic inhibitors such as vincristine, oncovin, affect the M phase, which includes prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Antimetabolites such as fluorouracil, fluorouracil, 5-FU, Adrucil, Carac, and Efodex are the most effective during the S phase. The effects of the alkylating agents such as cyclophosphamide are generally independent of the phases of the cell cycle. Some of these drugs are shown here in this figure. The growth fraction is a measure of the number of cells undergoing mitosis in a tissue. It is a ratio of the number of replicating cells to the number of resting cells. Anti-neoplastic drugs are much more toxic to tissues and tumors with high growth fractions. For example, solid tumors such as breast and lung cancers, generally have a low growth fraction. Thus, they are less sensitive to anti-neoplastic drugs. Now, certain leukemias and lymphomas have a high growth fraction and therefore have a greater anti-neoplastic success rate. Because certain normal tissues such as hair follicles, bone marrow, and gastrointestinal epithelium also have a high growth rate, they are sensitive to the effects of anti-neoplastics. Achieving a total cancer cure. To cure a patient, it is believed that every single cancer cell in a tumor must be eliminated from the body, leaving even a single malignant cell could result in regrowth of the tumor. Eliminating every cancer cell, however, is a very difficult task. As an example, consider that a small 1 cm breast tumor may already contain 1 billion cancer cells before it can be detected in a manual examination. A drug that could kill 99% of these cells would be considered a very effective drug indeed. Yet, even with this fantastic achievement, 10 million cancer cells would remain, any of which could potentially cause the tumor to return and kill the patient. The relationship between cell kill and chemotherapy is shown here in this figure. It is likely that no anti-neoplastic drug will kill 100% of the tumor cells. The large burden of cancer cells, however, may be lowered sufficiently to permit the patient's immune system to control or eliminate the remaining cancer cells. Because the immune system is able to eliminate only a relatively small number of cancer cells, it is imperative that as many cancerous cells as possible be eliminated during treatment. This example reinforces the need to diagnose and treat tumors at an early stage, when the number of cancer cells is smaller. Special chemotherapy protocols and strategies. Tumor cells exhibit a high mutation rate that continually changes their genetic structure, resulting in a more heterogeneous mass as the tumor grows. Essentially, the tumor becomes a mass of hundreds of different types of cancer cells with different growth rates and physiological properties. An anti-neoplastic drug may kill only a small portion of the tumor, leaving some clones unaffected, complicating the chances for a cure is that cancer cells often develop resistance to anti-neoplastic drugs. Thus, a therapy that was very successful in reducing the tumor mass at the start of chemotherapy may become less effective over time. The tumor becomes refractory to treatment. A number of treatment strategies have been found to increase the effectiveness of chemotherapy. Now we have the first type, combination chemotherapy. In most cases, multiple drugs from the use of multiple drugs affect different stages of the cancer cell's life cycle and attacks the various clones within the tumor via several mechanisms of action, thus increasing the percentage of cell kill. Combination chemotherapy also allows lower dosages of each individual drug, thus reducing toxicity and slowing the development of resistance. Examples of combination therapies include cyclophosphamide, methotrexate, fluorouracil for breast cancer, and cyclophosphamide, uh, doxorubicin, vincristine for lung cancer. Each type of cancer has its own individual protocol, which is continually being refined and revised based on current research. Type 2, dosing schedule. Specific dosing schedules or protocols have been found to increase the effectiveness of anti-neoplastic drugs. For example, some of the anti-cancer drugs are given as a single dose or perhaps several doses over a few days. A few weeks may pass before the next series of doses begins. This gives normal cells time to recover from the adverse effects of the drugs and allows tumor cells that may not have been replicating at the time of the first dose to begin dividing and become more sensitive to the next round of chemotherapy. Sometimes the optimum dosing schedule must be delayed until the patient sufficiently recovers from the drug toxicities, especially bone marrow suppression. The specific dosing schedule depends on the type of tumor, stages of the disease, and the patient's overall condition. Toxicity of anti-neoplastic drugs. Although cancer cells are clearly abnormal in structure and function, much of their physiology is identical to that of normal cells. Because it is difficult to kill cells selectively without profoundly affecting normal cells, all anti-cancer drugs have the potential to cause serious toxicity. These drugs are often pushed to their maximum possible dosages so that the greatest tumor kill can be obtained. Such high dosages always result in adverse effects in the patient. Normal cells that are replicating are most susceptible to adverse effects. Their hair follicles are damaged, resulting in hair loss or alopecia. The epithelial lining of the digestive tract commonly becomes inflamed, which is a condition known as mucositis. Consequences of mucositis include painful ulcerations, difficulty eating or swallowing, gastrointestinal bleeding, intestinal uh, infections, or severe diarrhea. The vomiting center in the medulla is triggered by many anti-neoplastics, resulting in significant nausea and vomiting. Because of this effect, anti-neoplastics are sometimes classified by their emetic potential. Before starting chemotherapy with the highest emetic potential medications, patients may be pre-treated with antiemetic drugs such as ondansetron, prochlorperazine, metoclopramide, or lorazepam. Stem cells in the bone marrow may be destroyed by anti-neoplastics, causing anemia, leukopenia, and thrombocytopenia. These adverse effects are dose limiting and the ones that most often cause discontinuation or delays of chemotherapy. Severe bone marrow suppression is a contraindication to therapy with most anti-neoplastics. Each anti-neoplastic drug has a documented nadir, the lowest point to which the erythrocyte, neutrophil, or platelet count is depressed by the drug. Although chemotherapy decreases all types of white blood cells, neutrophils are the type most affected. A patient is diagnosed with neutropenia when the neutrophil count is less than 1,500 cells per ml. Patients are very susceptible to infections while they are neutropenic. Many times, patients who are neutropenic are placed in reverse isolation to protect them from exposure to any infection from family members or healthcare providers. Now, even an infection from a mild cold could be fatal to patients with extremely low neutrophil counts. If a patient with neutropenia develops a fever, antibiotics are indicated. Efforts to minimize bone marrow toxicity may include bone marrow transplantation, platelet infusions, or therapy with growth factors such as epoetin alpha, filgrastim, or oprelvekin. The administration of filgrastim often prevents or shortens the time period of neutropenia, thus lowering the risk of opportunistic infections and allowing the patient to maintain an optimum dosing schedule. When possible, anti-neoplastics are given locally by topical application or through the direct installation into a tumor site to minimize systemic toxicity. Most anti-neoplastics, however, must be administered intravenously. Many anti-neoplastics are classified as a vesicants. They are agents that can cause serious tissue injury if they escaped from an artery or vein during an infusion or injection. Extravasation from an injection site can produce severe tissue and nerve damage, local infection, and even loss of limb. Rapid treatment of extravasation is necessary to limit tissue damage, and certain anti-neoplastics have specific antidotes. Now, for example, extravasation of carmustine is treated with injections of equal parts of sodium bicarbonate and normal saline into the extravasation site. Before administering intravenous anti-neoplastic drugs, nurses should know the emergency treatment for extravasation. Central lines or subclavian vein should be used with vesicants whenever possible. Anti-neoplastics with the strongest vesicant activity include busulfan, carmustine, uh, dacarbazine, dactinomycin, Donorubicin, idarubicin, meclorethamine, mitomycin, plicamycin, streptozocin, vinblastine, vincristine, and vinorelbine. Cancer survivors often face several possible long-term consequences from chemotherapy. Some antineoplastics, particularly the alkylating agents, they affect the gonads and have been associated with infertility in both male and female patients. A second concern for long-term survivors is the induction of secondary malignancies caused by antineoplastic drugs. These tumors may occur decades after the chemotherapy was administered. Although many different secondary malignancies have been reported, the most common is acute non-lymphocytic leukemia. In most cases, the immediate benefits of using antineoplastics to cure a cancer, it far outweighs the small risk of developing a secondary malignancy. Now we have the classification of antineoplastic drugs. Drugs used in cancer chemotherapy come from diverse pharmacologic and chemical classes. Antineoplastics have been extracted from plants and bacteria as well as created entirely in the laboratory. Some of the drug classes attack macromolecules in cancer cells such as DNA and proteins, whereas others poison vital metabolic pathways of rapidly growing cells. The common theme among all the anti-neoplastic medications is that they kill or at least stop the growth of cancer cells. Classification of the various anti-neoplastics is quite variable because some of the drugs kill cancer cells by different mechanisms and have characteristics from more than one class. Furthermore, the mechanisms by which some anti-neoplastics act are not completely understood. A simple method of classifying this complex group of drugs include the following categories. You have alkylating agents, anti-metabolites, anti-tumor antibiotics, natural products, hormones and hormone antagonists, biologic response modifiers, and targeted therapies, and lastly, miscellaneous anti-neoplastic drugs. We now have alkylating agents. The first alkylating agents, the nitrogen mustards, were developed in secrecy as chemical warfare agents during World War II. Although the drugs in this class have a different chemical structures, all share the common characteristics of forming bonds or linkages with DNA, a process called alkylation. Shown in figure 37.4, it illustrates the process of alkylation. Alkylation changes the shape of the DNA double helix and prevents the nucleic acid from completing normal cell division. Each alkylating agent attaches to the DNA in a different manner. However, collectively, the alkylating agents have the effect of inducing cell death to or at least slowing the replication of tumor cells. Although the process of alkylation occurs independently of the cell cycle, the killing action does not occur until the affected cell attempts to divide. The alkylating agents have a broad spectrum and are used against many types of malignancies. They are some of the most widely prescribed anti-neoplastic drugs. These drugs are listed here in this table. Now, because blood cells are particularly sensitive to alkylating agents, bone marrow suppression is the primary dose limiting toxicity of drugs in this class. Within days after administration, the number of erythrocytes, leukocytes, and platelets begin to decline, reaching a nadir at 6 to 10 days. Epithelial cells lining the gastrointestinal tract are also damaged, resulting in nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Alopecia may be expected from most of the alkylating agents. The nitrosurias and uh, mechlorethamine are strong vesicants. Approximately 5% of the patients treated with alkylating agents develop acute non-lymphocytic leukemia 4 years or more after chemotherapy has been completed. Anti-metabolites. Anti-metabolites are anti-neoplastic drugs that chemically resemble essential building blocks of cells. These drugs interfere with aspects of the nutrient or nucleic acid metabolism of rapidly growing tumor cells. Now, pharmacotherapy with anti-metabolites. Rapidly growing cancer cells require large quantities of nutrients to construct cellular proteins and nucleic acids. Anti-metabolite drugs are structurally similar to these nutrients, but they do not perform the same functions as their natural counterparts. When cancer cells attempt to synthesize proteins, RNA or DNA using the antimetabolites, metabolic pathways are disrupted and uh, cancer cells die or their growth is slowed. Classes of antimetabolites are the folic acid analogs, the purine analogs, and the pyrimidine analogs. Bone marrow toxicity is the principal dose-limiting adverse effects of many drugs in this class. Some also cause serious gastrointestinal toxicity, including ulcerations of the mucosa. Mercaptopurine and thioguanine can cause hepatotoxicity, including cholestatic jaundice. These medications are prescribed for leukemias and solid tumors and are listed here in this table. Folic acid analogs. Folic acid or folate is vitamin B9, which is essential for the growth and maintenance of cells. Lack of this vitamin during pregnancy can cause neural tube defects in the fetus. 3 folic acid analogs are used as anti-neoplastic drugs, wherein methotrexate, the oldest, is prescribed for several autoimmune disorders in addition to cancer. Pemetrexed and pralatrexate have very limited therapeutic applications. As anti-neoplastics, folic acid analogs are given at high doses, which can be toxic to normal cells as well as cancer cells. To to rescue normal cells, the drug leucovorin is administered following chemotherapy with methotrexate. Leucovorin or folinic acid is a reduced form of folic acid that is able to enter normal cells but not cancer cells. When used with fluorouracil in the treatment of colorectal cancer, leucovorin has been found to enhance cell killing. Purine and pyrimidine analogs. Purine and pyrimidines are bases used in the biosynthesis of DNA and RNA. The purine and the pyrimidine analogs are drugs structurally similar to their natural occurring counterparts. They can inhibit the synthesis of purine or pyrimidine bases, thus limiting the precursor needed for DNA and RNA biosynthesis. The analogs can also become incorporated into the structure of DNA and RNA, resulting in a disruption of nucleic acid function. Now, anti-tumor antibiotics. Anti-tumor antibiotics are drugs obtained from bacteria that have the ability to kill cancer cells. Although not widely used, they are effective against certain tumors. The anti-tumor antibiotics are listed here in this table. Now, pharmacotherapy with anti-tumor antibiotics. A number of substances isolated from microorganisms have been found to possess anti-tumor properties. These chemicals are more cytotoxic than traditional antibiotics, and their use is limited to treating a few specific types of cancer. For example, the only indication for idarubicin is acute myelogenous leukemia. Breast carcinoma is the only approved use for epirubicin. The anti-tumor antibiotics bind to DNA and affects its function by a mechanism similar to that of the alkylating agents. Thus, the general actions and side effects are similar to those of the alkylating agents. Unlike the alkylating agents, however, all the anti-tumor antibiotics must be administered intravenously or through direct instillation via a catheter into a body cavity. These drugs can cause major damage to the skin, subcutaneous tissue, and nerves also should extravasation occur. As with many other anti-neoplastics, bone marrow suppression is a major dose-limiting adverse effect of drugs in this class. Doxorubicin, uh, daunorubicin, epirubicin, and idarubicin are all closely related in structure, and cardiac toxicity is a major limiting adverse effect. Cardiotoxicity may occur within the minutes of administration or be delayed for months or years after chemotherapy has been completed. Natural products or plant extracts and alkaloids. Plants have been a valuable source for anti-neoplastic drugs. These natural products act by preventing the division of cancer cells. Pharmacotherapy with natural products. Agents with anti-neoplastic activity have been isolated from a number of plants, including the common periwinkle, Pacific yew, mandrake, and the shrub Camptotheca acuminata. Although structurally very different, medications in this class have the common ability to affect cell division. Thus, some of them are called mitotic inhibitors. The plant extracts or natural products are listed in this table, 37.5. There are three subdivisions of natural products used as anti-neoplastics: the vinca alkaloids, taxanes, and the topoisomerase inhibitors. The vinca alkaloids, vincristine and vinblastine, are two older drugs derived from more than 100 alkaloids isolated from the periwinkle plant. The medicinal properties of this plant were described in folklore. In several regions of the world, long before their anti-neoplastic properties were discovered. Despite being derived from the same plant, vincristine and vinblastine and the semi-synthetic vinorelbine exhibits different effects and toxicity profiles. Vincristine is the most common component of regimens for treating pediatric leukemias, lymphomas, and solid tumors. Vinblastine has traditionally been used to treat Hodgkin's disease and testicular tumors. The taxanes, which include cabazitaxel, paclitaxel, and docetaxel, were originally isolated from the bark of the Pacific yew, an evergreen found in forests throughout the western United States. Like the vinca alkaloids, the taxanes are mitotic inhibitors. Paclitaxel is approved for metastatic ovarian and breast cancer and for Kaposis sarcoma. However, off-label use include many other cancers. A new form of paclitaxel was approved in 2012, which is bound to albumin and delivers a higher dose of the drug directly to the cancer cells with fewer side effects. Docetaxel is approved to treat solid tumors, and uh, cabazitaxel, a newer taxane, is indicated for hormone refractory metastatic prostate cancer. Bone marrow toxicity is usually the dose limiting factor of the taxanes. American Indians described uses of the mayapple or wild mandrake long before pharmacologists isolated podophylotoxin, the primary active ingredient in the plant. As a botanical, Podophyllum has been used as an antidote for snake bites, as a cathartic, and as a topical treatment for warts. Uh, Teniposide and etoposide are semi-synthetic products of podophylotoxin. These drugs, known as topoisomerase 1 inhibitors, act by inhibiting topoisomerase 1, an enzyme that helps repair DNA damage. By binding in a complex with topoisomerase and DNA, these anti-neoplastics cause strand breaks that accumulate and permanently damage the tumor DNA. Etoposide is approved for refractory testicular carcinoma, small cell carcinoma of the lung, and choriocarcinoma. Teniposide is approved only for refractory acute lymphoblastic leukemia in children. Topotecan is approved for small cell lung cancer. Irinotecan is indicated for metastatic colorectal cancer. Bone marrow toxicity is the primary dose limiting adverse effect of drugs in this class. Hormones and hormone antagonists. Use of hormones or their antagonists as anti-neoplastic agent is a strategy used to slow the growth of hormone-dependent tumors. Hormonal therapy is limited to treating hormone-sensitive tumors of the breast or prostate. Pharmacotherapy with hormones and hormone antagonists. A number of hormones are used in cancer chemotherapy, including corticosteroids, progestins, estrogens, and androgens. In addition, several hormone antagonists have been found to exhibit anti-tumor activities. The mechanism of hormone anti-neoplastic activity is largely unknown. It is likely, however, that these anti-tumor properties are independent of their normal hormone mechanisms because the doses used in cancer chemotherapy are magnitudes larger than the amount normally present in the body. The hormones and hormone antagonists are believed to act by blocking substances essential for tumor growth. Because hormonal drugs are not cytotoxic, they produce few of the debilitating adverse effects seen with other anti-neoplastics. They can, however, produce significant adverse effects when given at high doses for prolonged periods. Because they rarely produce cancer cures when used singly, these medications are normally given for palliation. These agents may be classified into four general groups. We have corticosteroids, gonadal hormones, estrogen antagonists, androgen antagonists. Corticosteroids and glucocorticoids. The primary corticosteroids used in chemotherapy are dexamethasone and prednisone. Because of the natural ability of corticosteroids to suppress cell divisions and lymphocytes, the principal value of these hormones is in the treatment of lymphomas, Hodgkin's disease, and leukemias. They are sometimes given as adjunct to chemotherapy to reduce nausea, weight loss, and tissue inflammation caused by other anti-neoplastics. Prolonged use can result in symptoms of Cushing's disease. Gonadal hormones. Gonadal hormones are used to treat tumor cells that possess specific hormone receptors. Two androgens, uh, uh, fluoxymesterone and testosterone enanthate, are used for palliative therapy for advanced breast cancers in postmenopausal women. The estrogen ethinyl estradiol and diethyl silvestrol are used to treat metastatic breast cancer and prostate cancer. The progestin, medrocyprogesterone, and megestrol are used to treat advanced endometrial cancer. Leuprolide and histrelin are similar to gonadotropin-releasing hormone and used for advanced prostate cancer when other therapies have failed. Approved for advanced prostate cancer, histrelin is an implant that is inserted subcutaneously in the inner aspect of the upper arm to release the hormone over 12 months. Now, estrogen antagonists, anti-estrogens. Secreted by the ovary and the adrenal gland, estrogen is a hormone that has found metabolic action on many organs. Estrogen produces its actions throughout the body by activating estrogen receptors. Estrogen receptors are uh, overexpressed in many breast cancers, which are known as ER-positive tumors. Estrogen promotes the growth of ER-positive breast tumors. The estrogen antagonists or anti-estrogens are used to treat ER-positive tumors. Tamoxifen, which is the most uh, widely used drug for breast cancer. Torem, uh, Toremifene and raloxifene are called selective estrogen receptor modifiers. These drugs block estrogen receptors on breast cancer cells and slow tumor groups. The SERMs are also used to prevent osteoporosis. Raloxifene is a prototype drug for this indication. The estrogen antagonist class also includes anastrozole, letrozole, and exemestane, which are called aromatase inhibitors. These antiestrogens block the enzyme aromatase, which normally converts adrenal androgen to estradiol. Aromatase inhibitors can reduce plasma estrogen levels by as much as 95% and are used in postmenopausal women with advanced breast cancer whose disease has progressed beyond tamoxifen therapy. Now, androgen antagonist. The growth of prostatic carcinoma is usually androgen dependent. The androgen antagonists prevent testosterone and other androgens from reaching the receptors on cancer cells, thus preventing the cells of an important growth promoter. Drugs in this group bicalutamide, nilutamide, and flutamide are all administered per orem and are used only to treat prostate cancer. Biologic response modifiers and targeted therapies. Biologic response modifiers are drugs that are used to enhance the ability of body defenses to destroy cancer cells. BRMs include interferons, interleukins, and certain other cytokines. Some drugs in this class are immunostimulants. Pharmacotherapy with biologic response modifiers and targeted therapies. Biologic response modifiers would enhance the ability of body defenses to remove tumor cells. BRMs may produce their effect directly by binding to cancer cells and destroying them, or indirectly by activating general aspects of the immune response. BRMs may be grouped into two general classes: cytokines and targeted therapies. Now, these are listed here in this table, table 37.7. Cytokines that act as BRMs include interferons and interleukins. Interferons are natural proteins produced by T cells in response to viral infection and other biologic stimuli. Interferons bind to specific receptors on cancer cell membranes and suppress cell division, enhance the phagocytic activity of macrophages, and promote the cytotoxic activity of T lymphocytes. uh, peginterferon alpha 2A and interferon alpha 2B are approved to treat hairy cell leukemia, chronic myelogenous leukemia, Kaposi's carcinoma, and chronic hepatitis B or C. In 2011, 2015, and 2018, and 2021, the indication of PEG-INF alpha 2A were extended to include melanoma with nodal involvement. A prototype feature for INF alpha 2B is included in this lesson. No? The only interleukin approved for cancer chemotherapy is interleukin 2, which activates cytotoxic T lymphocytes and promotes other actions of the immune response. Marketed as Ardes or Aldesleukin, this drug is indicated for metastatic renal cell carcinoma. Research into the mechanism of cancer formation has allowed scientists to identify specific proteins or antigens on the surface of cancer cells that are not present in normal cells. Different types of cancer cells exhibit different antigens. For example, cells in a brain tumor would have different antigens than those of pancreatic tumor. Indeed, a single type of tumor in a patient may contain cancer cells with varied surface antigens. A targeted therapy is an anti-neoplastic drug that has been specifically engineered to attack these cancer antigens. Unlike interferons and interleukins, which are considered general immunostimulants, targeted therapies are engineered to attack only one specific type of tumor cell. Monoclonal antibodies, MAB, or BRMs, that are a type of targeted therapy. Once the MAB binds to its target cells, the cancer cell dies or is marked for destruction by other cells of the immune response. For example, rituximab is a MAB that binds to CD20, a surface protein present on B lymphocytes involved in certain leukemias and lymphomas. Once bound, rituximab lyses the tumor cells, as is typical of MABs. The action of rituximab is very specific. It was designed to only affect cells with the CD20 protein, in this case tumor B cells. The key point about MACs is that the tumor cells must possess the specific protein receptor. Otherwise, the MAB will be ineffective. This is illustrated in the figure here in this slide. In the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis and severe psoriasis, MABs are used to dampen overactive inflammatory cells. A few MABs carry a toxin that directly kills the tumor cell once it is bound. For example, gemtuzumab ozogamicin carries a cytotoxic anti-tumor antibiotic. The MAB reaches its target antigen and enters the cancer cell where the toxic antibiotic is released to cell death or to cause cell death. Tositumumab carries a radioactive iodine to its specific antigen, whereby the tumor cell receives a dose of ionizing radiation. Other types of targeted therapies are available that affect key metabolic pathway in tumor cells. Although these are not MABs, they still have highly specific targets. For example, amatinib and crizotinib, they block the action of tyrosine kinase, a key enzyme required for cell growth. Bevacizumab is an angiogenesis inhibitor which restricts the ability of tumors to establish a new blood supply. Cetuximab and trastuzumab are examples of drugs that inhibit epidermal growth factor receptor, a substance that accelerates cancer cell growth. The development of new targeted therapies for cancer is progressing at a rapid rate. Antineoplastics or miscellaneous antineoplastics. Certain anti-cancer drugs act through the mechanism other than those previously described. For example, asparaginase deprives cancer cells of asparagine, an essential amino acid. It is used to treat acute lymphocytic leukemia. Methotrexate, similar to the insecticide DDT, poisons cancer cells by forming the links to proteins and is used for advanced adrenocortical cancer, which has been approved since 2008. Plerixafor is classified as a hematopoietic stem cell mobilizer. The mobilized stem cells are then collected from the blood for subsequent autologous transplantation in patients with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and multiple myeloma. The miscellaneous antineoplastics are listed here in this table 37.8. That would be all for your anti-neoplastics and neoplastic medications. Source would be your McQuistion Linda E., the book in pharmacology, which is Pharmacology, a Patient-Centered Nursing Process Approach, 11th edition. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice day.